it's okay to compromise with yourself as long as you're still challenging yourself. 14? Is this 14?
I don't know, but we were going to continue with how we left off last time, grieving someone who has not died, grieving the loss of, grieving loss not due to death. I would say not necessarily even a single person. It could be a lot of things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is grieving, and it's amazing to me how many people don't understand the complexity and the enormity of grief. And I would say not like the general public, but I would say practitioners, like primary doctors and stuff like that. You know, if they just asked a few questions and understood the basics of how mental health works, they might be able to guide people in a better direction than just, here, take this oral thing, and life will get better. And then they're like, well, this isn't getting better, and now I have these things that go along with it, and like, oh, here, take another oral thing to deal with those things. And you know, before you know it, it's like 6 oral things a day and nothing's getting any better. It's because you haven't treated the root cause, you know. And you know, when I talk to people and have conversations about, you know, they'll just share with me in just basic conversation, and I'm like, you do realize, like, you're grieving, right? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, you're grieving this. You're grieving the loss of a best friend. You're grieving the loss of a pet. You're grieving the loss of even just somebody moving out of the area. Like, you're grieving the loss of that relationship and how it has always been. And people only think grief is death, and it's so much more. So much more.
Absolutely. I think grief can come from like any vision or like aspect or even realities like that just doesn't turn out to what you want it to be. Like, as simple as like going to the grocery store and thinking, oh, I really want this, walking up to it and it's not there, or they're out of stock. You know, like, you're going to grieve for just a second, you know. And if anybody thinks like food is nothing to grieve about, you have not, or somebody special around you has not been pregnant and not gotten their pregnancy cravings. Watch how fast that fucking happens, because that's some grief, I'll tell you. You know, but like, I completely agree with what you said. And it's people think that grief is just sadness and little bits of anger and stuff like that. No, like, there are so many different pieces to this, you know. Like, one of my favorite things is the sad, or not the sadness, but like the happy memories that pop up, right? And you think like, oh fuck, like for a split second you're back there, right? And you're like, okay, everything's the same. And then you snap out of it, and it's that abrupt, not like sadness that hits you, but like it's that like confusion. You know, that's one of my favorite pieces, because then confusion always opens that door to like, okay, what really happened? You know, it gives you that examination piece between both you and the other party, you know. And I think that why that's my favorite part is because that allows you to move forward with the grieving process and not just be stuck, you know.
Absolutely.
But no, I completely agree with what you said, Colleen. It happens with everything, not just death. You know, gosh, like, I mean, a few examples that I know some of our audience could possibly relate to. I mean, from small scale, I want you to think of like the first offer you put out, or the first time that you stood your kid up to walk, or the first time you put something that you were really excited for your kid to try in front of them and they hated it. We've all been there. We've all been there, right? There's a little piece of sadness, and then like, well, wait, why? You know, what happened? You know, that piece alone is grief, and seeing those in those micro aspects, I think gives you a simpler route to seeing the bigger complex pieces of grief or waves of grief. Is that the better terminology? Yeah, because like you said, most people see it in just both death, right? Rather
Yep.
than seeing it being in real life aspects while people are still living, people are still moving, you know? I think seeing it in those micro pieces of those everyday things, right? I think it gives you that bigger lens to look at. Oh, did I lose a connection? Did my best friend move away? Did I block my parent? Did I cut ties with the group I was hanging out with? You know, like all of those pieces, right? And then you can say, oh, well, I can pinpoint those pieces because sometimes we forget about those things. Not forget about them, but we block them because we don't want to think about them, right? Because when we think about them, it brings up all those feelings that we don't want to feel. So then we don't understand why we're stuck in this. God, why do I feel so sad today? Why do I feel so angry today? Why do I feel so, well, what's next today, or confused or anxious, and all of those pieces, when in all reality, you're in a wave of grief.
Yep. And everybody wants to rush it along because, the majority of people truly just want to feel good, and it's the best thing that you can do when you are experiencing any of that is to just wake up and put one foot in front of the other and do what it is that you would typically do, even if you feel completely blah about it. If you don't have joy, if you don't have sadness, if, like you're just completely indifferent, that's your brain actually protecting you. This is my take on it. I don't know if there's any scientific belief or mental health like studies or whatever, but I truly believe that from birth to death, our bodies have every single system that they need to keep us alive.
Mm-hmm.
That is our medical system, heart pumping, lungs breathing, liver function, like all that stuff. And then the mental health system, which is like this. It's not like two separate systems. It's two separate components in the body, but it all works together. So when you are experiencing, I would say, for lack of better term, big grief, right? Like something that has really rocked your world. You decide whatever that is. But a bigger grief, something that could potentially last, weeks on end, potentially even months. You're going to feel kind of like people took the sugar out of life, right? It's just bland. You know that you enjoy going out with your significant other. You enjoy watching your children. You enjoy your pets. Like, you enjoy the sun. Like, you know that you enjoy those things, but your body is like, not today.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I truly believe, that your mental health system is protecting you from frying your body because of overwhelming grief. And that's oftentimes why when people do unexpectedly or expectedly lose someone to death, someone that's significant in their life, that's typically why you hear people say, like, I don't even remember the services. I don't remember, like, wow, I don't even remember like the first year. Well, that doesn't surprise me, because when it first happens, that protection shuts everything down. Yes, you might cry, you might wail, you might not be able to get out of bed, but you're not truly feeling everything that you possibly could be feeling, because that system has shut it down. Because I truly believe if it didn't, you would emotionally overheat and you would die. Like, you would just completely burn out your central nervous system. Every single piece of your body, with the exception of your brain, is attached to your central nervous system, and you literally would just short circuit your whole entire body. I believe that to be true. Again, I don't know if there's any sort of scientific stuff to validate that, but that's what I think happens. So in any event, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Eat that breakfast, drink that coffee, go out with your friends, hang out with your kids, see your siblings, whatever it might be. Put on that dress, put on that suit, go swimming, like whatever activity it is that you would typically do, do it, because that reminds your brain, oh, that's right. This is what it means for this person to fully live.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way, in my opinion, that is the only way to work through grief of any kind, is to just do what you typically would do. And eventually your brain will allow your circuitry system to start feeling again.
Okay.
And that's why, like, if you look at the stages of grief, that's why, like, you don't just go through one, go through one, go through one. Like, you're going to ebb and flow and zigzag out of them for as long as you're going to. And I always say most things are 12 months. Most things. Recovery from surgery, 12 months. Recovery from a significant injury, 12 months. You know, recovery from having a baby, 12 months. Like, it typically takes your body 12 months to recover. So if you're dealing with a significant grief, not going to your restaurant and they don't have your favorite dessert, right? You're going to move on from that pretty quickly.
Right.
But a significant grief, you're not going to start to feel like yourself until after the first anniversary. And, you know, a lot of people, the majority of people that I've ever worked with, they don't realize that. Like, well, I just want these feelings to be gone. Why? Don't rush them. Same thing with anxiety. You know, people are like, oh, I just don't want to feel this way anymore. Well, then feel it. And you won't feel this way for very long. Stop running from it. The more you run from it, the more it tells your alarm system that, ooh, this really is an alarm going off. We need to keep giving her the signal. And it will keep giving you that signal. Versus if you sit in a calm state and you feel what you're feeling, even if you can't identify why you're feeling that way, you feel what you're feeling, you deal with the discomfort, you will send the signal to your brain, well, she didn't really care for that, so there must not really be an alarm. There's no dinosaur chasing her, all that stuff. So, but I've worked with so many clients over the years who have lost, like, best friends. I once had a client who had a best friend for 50 plus years. They were in each other's weddings. They met in childhood. They were godparents to each other's kids. They were like, they went on vacations together. Like, they truly were more than best friends. They were like family. Their kids grew up together. Their husbands were friends. And just one day, my client could not explain why their best friend of almost 60 years would no longer speak to them. Gone out of their life. Like what? Like, how does that happen? And that is significant grief. Significant grief. And it wasn't until I had that conversation with this person and it explained to them that they were like, oh, now I know why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. I'm like, yeah, you were grieving the loss. Well, yeah, but they're not dead. They don't have to be. They're out of your life. It's like a death.
Crazy. It's crazy. But no, I completely agree with you on, like, the mental piece, shutting it down so you don't self-circuit. Because from someone who, and I know, like, I know that I never know when my grief journey is going to be over for a few different things in my life. Just like Colleen, like, I know that there's things that you're probably working through now that you're like, okay, like, I don't know when this is going to be done, but I got to go through it, right? But from going through phases of this and knowing what that first initial phase feels like, that, like, okay, past this anniversary, past this, and like even moving toward like years past things, right? Like I completely agree with you. Whether there's science, whether it's fucking medical, whether it's anything, because I think that if your brain had to put in the work that it's been doing for the years that these waves have come up, whether you've ran away from them or you sat with them when they've come up, right? We're both, look, I'm guilty of both. Okay. Like I will be the first one to admit it. I run from that kind of shit I have ran from that shit from a really long time. I don't really run from it anymore now because I know that just brings a brick to my back and I don't want another brick, right? Like I'm trying to remove the bricks off my back. So with that being said, like I honestly, and I'm no doctor or anything like that, but I don't think that our brains, this is going to sound crazy. I do not think our brains are complex enough to handle all of that. That's why it shuts it down like that, because those waves of grief, you're coming back and then you're like asking yourself those deeper questions, right? Think about it that if you felt all of that at one time, holy fuck, that makes my head hurt thinking about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
you would completely burn out your whole entire body.
Like, oh my goodness. But I also could not agree more with you with putting the foot forward. And I think that's the hardest fucking thing, right? Especially for the people who are feeling that right now, feeling the weight in your own body, whether you know what it is or you don't know what it is, right? I think that is the hardest part because, like Colleen said, like you just have to keep going, right? Life doesn't stop. And I think that that's the hardest part in today's society because we always look at, well, health, right? If you have to have surgery or if you have a baby or if you get hurt on the job, what's the first priority? Hey, get yourself better so you can come back and so you can work, right? But when you're not mentally right, what happens, right? Whether you're badgered or your work goes down and then you're punished or like shit's forgotten around the house and people are mad, you know, like whether it's your spouse, your kids, whoever, right? Like people are like, well, what the fuck's going on? You know, I do not understand why we treat our minds any different than our bodies because our minds need that just as much as our bodies do.
Yep.
You know, so remember that too when it does come to putting that foot forward. You can only push your body so far. So if it's screaming at you, I need a day in bed, give it to it. If it's screaming at you saying, we don't want to feel like this anymore, but I don't want to go push myself to do this, you need to figure out your own compromise, okay? If it's not doing that activity, maybe it's getting out and sitting on the porch. You know, you have to find that balance within yourself, and you have to understand that compromising with yourself is kind of the first step, right?
Yep.
So understand that, like, it's okay to compromise with yourself as long as you're still challenging yourself. That's not giving up. That's not being lazy. That's not any other fucking self-sabotaging term out there, right? No, that's actually being human and listening to both pieces of your computer. And I hate referring to your body as that, but that's exactly what it is. I said it before. We are balls of energy in flesh bags, right? Your mind, your body, they are two parts of the component of the computer, like Colleen said, right? They sit just like this. Well, you can't expect your body to work full function if your brain's not. Just like you can't expect your brain to work full function if your body's not.
Yep.
Right? Absolutely. And when it comes to putting that foot forward, one of the best practices, and this is something that I started, people thought I was silly for it, but it's something that I've continued and actually it's really, really helped me, right? When you're in that stage of your body just feels heavy, you feel kind of numb, you don't really know what's happening, right? because you're not used to the routine without the people around you, and that's okay. Okay? It's okay. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to be like, what happened? Right? But in that situation, understand that the best thing for you in that is to document what you do for yourself, right? I don't care if it's I watered my plants. I don't care if it's I swept the kitchen floor. I did this. I like little fucking things. You brushed your fucking teeth, right? Because when you are sitting in that peace, sometimes just giving yourself those little victory moments is the stepping stones you need to get yourself back on track, right? To feel like yourself again. Like Colleen
Yeah.
said, putting that foot forward. The more that I documented those smaller pieces, right? Whether it was self-care for myself, whether it was self-care for the house, self-care for the family, whatever it was, self-care for the business, whatever that task was, I kept writing it down. And believe it or not, that's what's got me to, like post content regularly, consistently, and show up here consistently, and show up on calls consistently, right? You have to start somewhere. You have to be willing to start somewhere. That's the key.
Yep. And I think that brings up a lot for me. And I think it's a big topic that maybe, unless something comes up compelling between now and next week, overcoming the guilt of self-care when you're coming out of grief.
Ooh, that's a good one too. That one's going to be deep. Overcoming the grief. No, the guilt.
Yep. For self-care. And, like as you're going through healing from grief, small negotiations with yourself are fine. Yeah. Like you mentioned, if you need a day in bed, take it. If the second day your brain is saying like, nah, just stay in bed today. And you're like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna like negotiate with you. I'll stay in bed, but every hour I'm not gonna lay in bed all day. I'm gonna sit. I'm gonna sit in bed. I'm gonna watch TV because your brain probably isn't in any sort of state to read anything. And I'm gonna watch TV. I'm not gonna sleep all day today like I did yesterday. But I'm gonna sit up. And I'm gonna put an alarm on my phone, and every hour I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna walk around. Maybe just the bedroom to start. Maybe if you live in a house, the top floor, second floor, however your house is laid out. Small negotiations with yourself. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Be like, all right, you know what? Yesterday I didn't eat any food. Today I'm gonna take 4 bites of something, right? Like have these small negotiations with yourself to things that you normally do on a regular basis. So you slowly are training your brain like, oh, yeah, I don't want to lay in bed all day today. I slept all day yesterday away. It's exactly what I needed to do because I just I couldn't stop crying. Like you just needed that rest, right? Take that rest. That's recovery time for your brain as well. But don't take that endlessly. And for some people, they might need it for weeks. They might need to bed rot for weeks with small negotiations of things. Some people might only need 2 days. Some people are able to experience grief while functioning. They don't feel joy. They don't feel sadness. They don't feel excitement, but they're still able to function. And that's okay too. Like everybody's relationship with themselves is different, but similar at the same time. So yeah, I think talking about the guilt of self-care next week, like again, unless something comes up for one of us, that's more of a hot button, but I think that would be a nice continuance of last episode, this episode, because it's a big one for people.
Oh yeah, I agree. And that self-care is actually, I would argue that's one of the biggest keys to pulling yourself out of that grief cycle.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you, Colleen. And real fast, because I know you probably got to get ready and hop off, but um, like Colleen said, like she has said this multiple times in a couple different ways, but you are your own. You know yourself better than anybody else.
You are your own professional.
Thank you.
What I
Thank
say
you.
to people all the time.
I knew it was something I couldn't remember exactly, but yes.
Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. No, I don't care if someone is the president of the medical place where you're going or the mental health place where you're going. You are your best professional.
Correct.
Don't let them talk you into otherwise.
Correct. But also remember this, and I can't take credit for this. A really good friend said this. You also are your own terrorist too. So remember that you can be your own professional, but you have to be willing to fight that own terrorist in your head. And it comes from these many negotiations, these many compromises, this many, like, okay, no, we're going to do this today. Like it comes from these many conversations to push that down, because that inner critic, that mini terrorist in your head, whatever your worst critic, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? Like it's going to be very loud in those moments, and it's going to want you to stay put, right? Because it doesn't want you to get out of that. So be willing to compromise with yourself, but be willing to challenge yourself at the same time. Okay. Absolutely. And don't shame yourself for it either.